Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Just Keep Parenting. Glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us. And wanted to just bring you up to speed. Last week we talked about creating a cycle of success with our children, with our parenting, with our caregiving. We've been talking about the book Easy to Love, Difficult to Discipline by Dr. Becky Bailey. And just having a little conversation here, kind of one-sided, but I'm hoping that it'll spark some thoughts or some things that we're able to do to help our parenting, to help our child, just as we serve children. And so today I want to talk a little bit more about, last week we ended up with compliance, two things as we think about discipline encounters. And the first one is the parent or the caregiver's need, which is usually compliance, right? We want the child to do something that they're not doing. Either right now or in the future. And so it usually unfolds in 4 stages. And so Merry Christmas to everybody. And so one of the things that we have to think about is the first stage, which we've already mentioned, right? Which is we want the child to do something that they're not doing, or their behavior is out of bounds. Sometimes that happens as well. All of a sudden it's like, whoa, Nellie, where'd this come from, right? And so we're probably feeling upset as the caregiver, as the parent at that point. And so we need to call on those 7 powers of self-control that we've talked about before. So if you don't know what those are, look back in the channel and you can refer to those. But we need to regain our composure, right, which is one of the powers, and we need to also grab onto that power of attention. Remember, the power of attention is focus on what we want more of, right? What we want to have happen, actually. So we access that power of free will, right? And we release the notion that I can make this child behave, because sometimes that's what we want to do, right? That's that piece in us that's back in our brain stem where we're like, but we have to get control first, and then we can help the child. So focus on helping the child to be more compassionate and choose to cooperate, right? That's what the book is all about, is the 7 basic skills for turning conflict into cooperation, right? And so if we're not composed, then it's really hard for us to have children that are composed in certain situations, right? So in the second stage, right, as we've decided, yes, we're having this little issue here, and I've got to gain composure, right? I've got to focus on what I want to have happen, and I've got to help the child be able to choose to cooperate at that point, right? And so we move into the second stage, and we set the limit, right? And the child responds, or not. Right? We talk to the child about what the options are, right? And the ones that are not acceptable too. I know in the classroom when we're doing this, we talk about running is, if we've got a child that's running and running and running around, and there's edges and corners. And that's the first thing you say is running is not safe, right? So that is not acceptable. And we use that word. Running is not acceptable in our classroom because my job, I know, it's to keep me safe. And so we talk about that, right? How that is not acceptable, but these are some things that you could do. You could go play at the large motor center, you could go to dramatic play, and I tell them what they're doing. So what are you going to choose, right? And totally puts that responsibility back on them now that they know what is acceptable, right? And so I'm using the skill of assertiveness, right? I'm taking that bull by the horns. I'm not being mean about it, but I'm being assertive with them to tell them what their choices are, and they're taking on that skill of choices, making choices, right? So I have to remember to relax and look at the big picture, right? Sometimes we talk about choosing our battles, right? And it's like, wait a minute, is this worth the battle that it's causing right now? Maybe a child's clothes is not worth the battle, right? Maybe that's not something we want to choose to battle with, right? So look at the big picture as we're doing this. So in stage 2, your child will respond by either complying and do what you say according, when you set the limits. The second thing they could do is to resist the limit, right? And say no verbally, or non-verbally. And it may be subtle or it may be blatant, right? Still all just no, right? The other thing that they could do is just throw a fit, right? Express frustration over the limit. So then we move into stage 3, right? And stage 3 is going back to, okay, we've composed ourselves, right? We know that there's something going on. We've tried to compose ourselves so that we can help the child choose to cooperate, right? And so we move into stage 3, and stage 3 is my reaction, the caregiver, the parent's reaction to the child's response, right? Because they've chosen those 3 different things, one of those 3 different things to respond, one of those ways. And so if they choose compliance, then we pull out the skill of encouragement, right? Way to go, that was really hard, right? You did a really hard thing right now, because I can tell you're upset, but you chose to cooperate. You chose to go get your shoes on so that we can go Christmas shopping, or that we can go to grandma's or whatever, right? So that skill of encouragement. If the initial response is no, right, that's one of their choices, then my response, right, my reaction is going to teach the child how to respond when others resist his suggestions, right? And so having that chance to sit down and just talk about, buddy, I know this is hard for you, but I can't leave you home by yourself because you're not old enough yet. And so your choice is to come with me. So you can choose where to sit in the car. You can sit on the right side or the left side. You can choose to have me help you put your shoes on if that's what you need. If that's what you need to feel better, I'm sure I can help put your shoes on, right? And so having those empathetic conversations with them, rather than just put on your stinking shoes and get in the car, right? Because then that is how they're going to treat other people, right? As they have those suggestions. So we have to really think about our reaction to their compliance or their non-compliance, and be able to have that plan B or C, or sometimes I say even Z in place, right? And then the 4th stage, my friends, is the child finally chooses to comply, right? Okay, I want to sit on the other side of the car. Great, we can make that happen, right? Thank you for using your words. Thank you for talking me through that. I appreciate you being able to help me solve this problem, because we have lots of problems we have to solve, right? So way to go, we just solved another problem, right? So keep that encouragement going, right? As we use the skills of positive intent and empathy, right, we can avoid power struggles with our children. Sometimes a child simply will not do what's asked of them, right? They'll remain unmotivated. We've had that happen, right? And so in that case, consequences, right? That's the next skill, consequences delivered with a loving intent, right? That's what's going to help us to help them choose cooperation. And so as we think about that, they're not coming to grandpa's, they're not doing whatever, then we have to get on our thinking brain, right, and be able to use a consequence, right? And it doesn't have to be a mean consequence. It doesn't have, it shouldn't be a physical consequence, but we got to figure this out, right? And so if you're not going to get on your shoes and get in the car with grandpa, then I'm going to help you get in the car, and we're going to talk about what the consequence should be, right? Because this isn't something that you get to choose right now, my friend. And so I'm trying to hold it together. And I think it's important that our kids understand that we have those emotions, right? We get upset as well. So I'm afraid that if I choose a consequence right now, it might not be a really great consequence. So I'm going to take a deep breath, and we're going to talk about this after we get in the car today. Right? And then be able to both come out of our brain stems, right? Both be composed as we talk about this. And so as we think about all the different, scenarios that come up in our parenting and our caregiving each day, I hope that we'll think about the stages, right? And watch ourselves unfold each of those stages, which are, we want a child to do something that they're not doing, right? We set the limit, and the child responds either negatively or positively, right? Then our reaction to that response. And then the 4th one that we have to think about is the child finally chooses and complies, or doesn't comply, then we have to set some consequences in. So I hope that as you move into another stage of your parenting, that you'll have something to think about. Even with, it may not work with all the children, right? And each child is going to be different in these stages, right? We have some children who are always compliers, but we're going to have some children who just at the moment that you say something, their guard is up, right? And so take some time. Take a deep breath, right? Tell yourself that you can do hard things. Parenting is one of the hardest things that anybody ever does. Caregiving is hard, right? So feel free to give us a share. Talk to one of your friends about parenting struggles that you're having, right? We all need a buddy as we're heading down this parenting, caregiving path. We have a great week, and we'll see you next week on Fabulous Friday. Just keep parenting. Thanks, everybody.